July 1969, I was a 13-year-old kid. I'd always been interested in space travel and astronomy. I'd followed all the American space missions and the Russians with whatever information they let the world know about. I was really excited for Apollo 11 to land on the moon. I'd studied it for a long time. I read all the newspapers. I read several books on the program. The CBC ran a special on the national news every night for several weeks prior to the mission, detailing various aspects, talking about the machinery, talking about the men, talking about the people in the back room. It was an exciting time.
Besides my interest in astronomy and spaceflight, I also like to build models, particularly models of spacecraft. On July the 15th, the day before Apollo 11 launched, I picked up the Revell Apollo spacecraft and had it built before the end of the day. It would be my constant companion throughout the rest of the Apollo program. Sadly, the model didn't survive all the demonstrations I did with it, but in the 1980s, the kit was re-released and I bought it and rebuilt it, which is the one in the pictures here. The morning of the launch, I was probably up at 4 a.m. It was very exciting. Something that kids today don't appreciate, watching shuttle launches where all news stations would pop in maybe 2 minutes before the shuttle took off, was that the launches back in those days were on hours before the launch, and you would learn an awful lot as they had to fill in the time. I often think the rocket launches back in the Gemini and Apollo days were kind of like a baseball rain delay, where they had to fill the time with something. But Apollo 11 was going to the moon. It was just unbelievable. In my own mind, I'd made that trip to the moon several times using the telescope my parents gave me for Christmas years before. The telescope had a zoom lens, and I would imagine myself rushing towards the moon, preparing for a landing. The day of the landing, Sunday, July 20th, we sat transfixed in front of the television watching the animation. CBC used the CBS feed. We watched a countdown to the lunar landing, and this would cause some confusion later on. I sat there with my lunar module model I'd built a few days before, tilting it and such, and showing my mom and sister and that what exactly was going on. My dad wasn't home at the time. Now, as they got closer and closer to the moon, with the countdown, we saw the contact light come on in the simulation, and they showed the lunar module sitting on the surface. But clearly, they were still flying around. What's going to happen? Before that, they were also talking about alarms, so I wondered, are they ever going to land on the moon?
Forward, drift into the right a little. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward, just. Contact light.
And there it was. They were down.
Okay,
I said to my the room, they've landed.
Mode control, both autos, engine command override off. Engine arm on.
We're home.
413 is in.
Man on the moon.
We copy you down, Eagle. Houston,
Oh, jeez.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Twin.
That famous phrase is often said to be the first words from the moon, but it was actually contact light. Throughout the afternoon, there was a lot of discussion about the landing and its meaning and such, but we wanted to see them walk on the moon. We waited for that TV picture, and when it popped on the screen, we thought, ugh, it's terrible. You can't see anything.
You got a good picture, huh?
There's a great deal of contrast in it, and currently it's upside down on our monitor, but we can make out a fair amount of detail.
But the picture stabilized, it flipped over, and we could make out Neil Armstrong at the foot of the ladder. And then he took that famous small step.
I'm going to step off the limb now.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Watching the moon walk live on TV was really something, but there was one moment where I just went, wow, they really did it, and it's coming up right here. It's when they took the camera off the limb and put it on a tripod away from the spacecraft.
Okay.
Did you miss it? It's right here. When they looked back at the limb and Buzz standing next to it on the surface of the moon. Man was on the moon. Unbelievable. I'm still interested in astronomy and spaceflight. I have a much bigger telescope now, and I belong to an astronomy club. I like to do public outreach, letting people look through my telescope, and I like to give talks on astronomy and related subjects.
Usually when the whole world comes together to share in something, it's usually something bad. The Kennedy assassination, the Challenger disaster, 9/11. But Apollo 11, the world came together, and it was for something good. And when I was a kid, I wonder if it's going to be as magical when people land on Mars. Well, I thought I would have known the answer to that by now, but well, maybe my kids will find out. Thanks. I'm Jeff Robertson from Edmonton, Canada.